Hey everyone, thanks for watching my last video that addressed my absence from this channel for the past few years. I appreciate the support and thank you to everybody who reached out to me directly. Like I said in the previous video, I want to be making content regularly instead of waiting a long time and then having to constantly say, it's been a while. So here's another video. So Ghost has a new movie coming out in theaters for 2 days only called Right Here, Right Now. And I've been a fan of Ghost since 2013 when I first heard Year Zero. So obviously I had to get tickets to see this movie. Tickets were selling out real fast the day that the trailer was released. So I'm really lucky to have gotten tickets to see it. The last time I saw Ghost was in 2019 at the DCU Center in Worcester. It was the Cardinal Copia era of the band, so the newest material they had up till that point was Mary on a Cross, Kiss the Goat, Kiss the Go-Goat, I think that's what it is. So I feel pretty fortunate to have seen that. I haven't seen the Papa 4 incarnation of the band since Impera came out, but this will be pretty cool. When I saw them in 2019, they actually played a few songs that I was really hoping they would play, because the few times before that I saw them, they didn't play them. And one in particular was Satan Prayer, because I saw how they had started to arrange it live, where he started to sing the lower harmony, and he kind of encouraged the audience to sing in a low voice without getting too technical with the terms. An evil voice is what he said. Hear our Satan pray, like the low one, because he was singing the high harmony and it just wasn't sounding as cool as the recording. So when he got the crowd to sing the low harmony, he went in with the high harmony and it sounded incredible.
Everybody sing it in an evil voice, like this. Hear our Satan prayer, our anti-listening, like a smoky grandmother. Hear our Satan prayer, for the coming to see. Good. Hear our Satan prayer, our anti-listening. Hear our Satan prayer, for the coming to see.
Not to mention the new band that he's got and everything. So that was just insane to see material from Opus, Infestissimum, Meliora, Prequel, and then the Mary on a Cross 7-inch. It was just like bam, 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 like such a good song selection. That was definitely the biggest venue I had ever seen Ghost play in. I wasn't surprised because I always knew that they'd have that kind of potential, but when I first heard Ghost, it was because I was browsing the Danzig message boards and somebody posted that they had a new song. Back then I didn't really check new bands out too often, but there was just something about the artwork and the upload and the fact that the band's name was just Ghost. I think it might have had BC at the end, but it's still just... I had heard about how Dave Grohl played drums on a cover song, and that's all I'd heard about them, and I didn't know what to make of that, so I didn't listen to it. And that was the Secular Haze single. But I clicked the Year Zero single, and that song just sent me into like another dimension. I was floored at the singing in it, how unbelievably catchy it was, how eerie that ending was, just the way he belted out Arcangelo, like it just, the whole song was, it's just amazing. That's the song that pulled me in to being a fan. And then I got Opus eponymous, and I was like, oh my god, this is like a perfect album. Tracks 1 through 9, perfect. Intro, nothing but perfect songs, beautiful instrumental outro with Genesis. I was convinced that they could not get any better than that they would never release a better album than that one. And they kept improving over the years. For the first 2 albums, they had such a serious image where Papa was very stoic, he didn't move much. His motions were that of like a conductor almost, and it was really eerie. And this is before the identities of the band were revealed. This is before anyone knew, publicly knew that Tobias Forge was Papa and the driving force of the band and all that. I had sort of figured it out because some people on the internet figured it out, that he was in Subvision and he was in Repugnant and Magna Carta Cartel. And then when I heard a few little things, I was like, oh, this is clearly the guy. But there was still this like real dark, serious mystique around the band, and it was something to behold. When I first saw them, it was in 2013, I think May, like around this time, possibly April. And they played at the Royale in Boston in front of 1,100 people. They played Opus Eponymous in full, Secular Haze, Year Zero, and I believe they ended with Monstrance Clock, and that was it. They played, like I said, to 1,100 people. And it was like the most intimate show I could have ever asked for. I was just right there. Papa 2 was my favorite as far as the mask goes. The way everyone was playing, like nobody was supposed to know who they were. He wasn't like cracking jokes in between songs, being kind of slapsticky like they are now. And don't get me wrong, I love the progression. When I first saw that Rats video and Cardinal Copia started dancing and doing the silly moves and stuff, I was in hysterics laughing. I was like, this is amazing. I am so glad they started to take a comedic route and get less demonic, satanic, and serious, because I knew that they would never really reach the masses with that kind of approach to everything. Tobias is just a genius in that sense. He knew exactly where to take the band. It's been so amazing and hilarious to watch that band progress. It's just unbelievable. I think I've seen them a total of 4 times. It's been amazing every time. I saw them at the House of Blues in Boston when they were doing Meliora. I got to meet Tobias, and this was right before the identities were revealed. I think you could just see how excited I was. So he hugged me, and because I was just like, oh my god, like you're the guy. And like nobody was supposed to know who he was. There were a handful of people waiting outside by the buses that clearly knew who the band were. So I waited till I saw Tobias and I ran up to him. I was like, I practiced singing to your voice. Your band has changed me. I learned how to play guitar better. I started to just basically fanboy over him to him, which I tend to do when I meet people that really move me. Like I did that with Glenn Danzig. That was embarrassing. And my brother was there to witness it, so he can attest. Anyway, I'll be seeing that movie in theaters, and I've already seen the preview. The fact that it started out with a serious look in Papa's eyes and the serious look in Sister's eyes, and then when they go to Papa Nil, he's like cross-eyed. It just really reminded me of like the Naked Gun movies. So I could tell this is gonna have some pretty humorous moments to it. And then the moment where he's like boxing through the crowd like Rocky. This is gonna be a funny movie. And the Absolution single that they released from it sounds amazing. It's like better than their actual live record that they released before, in my opinion. So it's gonna be great music and it's gonna be hilarious. So I'm more than looking forward to that. Also, one of my favorite bands in the whole world right now and for the past few years, King 810, will be coming to Massachusetts for the first time since I've been a fan, and I got tickets to see that. I knew the tickets were going on sale May 10th at 10 a.m. and I was right there May 10th, 10 a.m., and ordered tickets within the first 5 minutes, like as fast as I could. And it was for August 8th at Sonia in Cambridge. But then I realized their website said August 4th. And then the event page on Facebook said August 8th. And then it said they were going to be in New York on August 8th. And there was a lot of conflicting information. So, I know that I bought tickets. I just don't know what day this show is happening. So I contacted the band directly, and they're not quite sure what's going on or what happened. And they said they would get back to me about it. But I would assume, since I bought tickets through the venue that it's happening, that I will get to see this show and that my tickets will be honored. It's a 350 capacity venue, so to see one of my favorite bands at that small of a club is gonna be nuts. I honestly do not know how to explain King 810's music. I don't know how to introduce someone to their music. I don't know which songs I would pick. I could maybe pick like 5 songs for you to check out, but they might be the wrong 5 songs. I mean, they're very diverse, but my favorite stuff, and most people's favorite stuff, is the more heavy and intense music. They definitely fall under the nu metal genre umbrella. They definitely land there primarily, but they've got acoustic stuff. They got songs that have like violins and with no heavy parts whatsoever. They're really an experience of a band, and David Gunn is just a lyrical genius. He has a book called Summertime in Murder Town that I've read, obviously, and it's incredible. I've just never been more impressed with a lyricist in my life, I don't think. I think he's my favorite lyricist of all time. I might take that back at some point because I say pretty bold statements, but in this very moment, he's my favorite lyricist of all time. I'll say that. They're from Flint, Michigan, which is, famously a really rough area with the clean water crisis and everything like that. So a lot of the material, the earlier material especially, touches on growing up around that area and how hard it is, the violence, the drug addiction, etc., etc. It's some really harrowing, intense stuff. Like, it's not for the faint of heart, basically. I mean, it's really dark stuff. As far as music news goes, the band Off announced that they were breaking up. I have one of their records, and I really liked their first 4 EPs album when it first came out. I thought, this is great. This sounds like old school Black Flag with Keith singing. And I was really into it. Kind of fell off after the records that they released after that. But my friend Mark sent me an LP in the mail recently, and I checked it out, and it was really good. But I never got to see Off live, and they weren't as good as the Circle Jerks, in my opinion. So I'm hoping now that the Circle Jerks are back together, at least with Greg Hetson and Joey C. And I actually forget who's playing bass, to be honest. And I know they did that split with the Descendants where they cover each other, but I'm really hoping for like a new Circle Jerks album, because they haven't released one since the mid-90s. Oddities, Abnormalities, and Other Curiosities, I think is what it's called, with I Want to Destroy You on it. I got to see the Circle Jerks once, and that was at Warped Tour, and I remember that they played Nervous Breakdown at one point. That was incredible. I think I was about 19, maybe 20. But yeah, it was amazing. Keith's amazing. I saw the band Flag play at the Paradise in Boston, and that was just intense. Keith was amazing. I mean, the whole band was amazing. But that doesn't really have much to do with Off and the Circle Jerks, aside from the fact that Keith's involved. I just think that even as time goes by and he starts to age, he sounds just as ferocious, if not more so, than he did with Black Flag. So, hopefully that means more activity from the Circle Jerks. And it would be wrong of me to not mention the fact that producer, engineer, musician, and all-around innovative genius Steve Albini passed away earlier this week. That really struck a nerve with me, because he was a huge influence production-wise when I started to really get into paying attention to that kind of stuff. When I heard that he produced Nirvana's In Utero, what his letter to the band entailed, why Kurt wanted to go with Steve Albini for the recording, everything else with his mic placements, the fact that he wanted to just capture bands raw as they were, minimal overdubs at least. And his vision for recording bands was basically to capture how they sound live. He would put the vocals low in the mix like you would any other instrument, as opposed to with modern production, where the vocals are really up front and they're the focus of everything. He would put the vocals very low in the mix because it's a band. And that's generally how a band would sound at a practice space or in a small club or, what have you. Everyone says that his guitar sound for the bands was very mid-rangey. I don't really know what that means, despite the fact that I play guitar. I assume it's just what the guitars on those recordings sound like. So I have a pretty good idea what mid-range is, but I'm not entirely sure. He produced a lot of records that I like, and a handful that I love. At one point in 2009, my band Energy was seriously considering going to Steve Albini to do our follow-up record to Invasions of the Mind, because we really started to get into wanting to sound more real, more genuine. What it would sound like if you really just heard us playing. Because we actually tracked the drums of Invasions of the Mind at Q Division Studios, which is where Steve produced the Pixies album Surfer Rosa. And I saw the Pixies plaque on the wall and I was like, wow, this is a real deal studio. There was 2-inch tape, the whole thing. I was like, this is a serious studio. This isn't just Pro Tools. And the drums that were coming out of those monitors were insane. The sound of the drums on 2-inch tape was something I'll never forget. But unfortunately with our record, it was compromised in the mixing process due to modern production and mixing decisions that involved triggering, which is basically sound replacement. Like if something wasn't even enough, they would put a little extra kick drum there so that it sounded more consistent, whereas Steve Albini's production style would have been, well, if the kick drum wasn't very loud there, that's just what happened, and that's how the band played it, because it's natural. And if I had a band at this moment and had the opportunity to go into a studio and record that way, I would choose that over the way people record now. It's more real. It's the real deal. Steve Albini was the real deal. I have 3 records that he produced, and I only say it like that because he didn't want to think of himself as a producer. He was just an engineer. He would say, pay me like you would a plumber, or something along those lines. He gets the job done, he does his technical work, and then that's it. He wouldn't take production credits, he wouldn't take points on records, which would take money away from the band, which was common practice back in the day. He did that with Nirvana, which eventually would have taken millions of dollars away from Nirvana, and he would have walked away with millions. But he found that despicable and unethical. He said it was disgusting and that he wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And that's extremely admirable, in my opinion. I have a handful of records that Steve produced, including Jawbreakers, 24-Hour Revenge Therapy. It's a great record. I did a cover of Do You Still Hate Me acoustically. I think it's on this channel somewhere. You can go check that out, or I'll link it in the bio. So then this is a really raw, real sounding record. I think he, as a joke, said that the record was produced by his cat on the liner notes, because he was really into animals. He was on Animal Planet at one point, which was strange. I remember seeing the episode and being like, that's Steve Albini talking about cats. It was just like, I don't know, it's kind of like out of left field, but then it was, it was nice. The second record that I have is one of my first records that I got when I was starting to really build my collection, and that is Surfer Rosa by the Pixies. This And the Breeders' Pod were the reason that Kurt Cobain went with Steve Albini to record In Utero, because of the noisy drums, the way the guitars sounded, just everything sounded very real and raw and unique in a way that albums just didn't sound typically. Nevermind had a real slick sound to it, and Kurt wanted to get away from that, to be more noisy, more real, more raw, basically everything that Steve Albini did. But this is a great record, and the drums that start off with Bone Machine are just unbelievable. It starts off with drums. You can immediately hear the big room sound with the drums, and his production style just immediately hits you right off the bat. This is a great record. If you haven't checked this out, for the love of God, listen to it. And last but certainly not least, Nirvana, In Utero. This album was one of the albums that got me into rock music as a teenager, even preteen. I remember reading in a magazine like Hit Parader or Circus magazine that Kurt had been gone for 4 years. So I was like that young. That was like 1999 or 98 when I was really getting into Nirvana. Nirvana was the band that made me say, I want to be in a band. And this was a huge album for me. And I didn't know anything about producers back then, but the drum break in Milk It, where they're playing the riff and then Dave Grohl's drums just keep going, that part, like the silence between the guitars where they duck out and then the drums keep playing, I thought was the most intense, eerie silence. That it had so much energy. The silence had so much energy. That's kind of a testament to the dynamics of a rock band recorded correctly and accurately. The silence between the noise. I mean, that's the definition of dynamics. Quiet, loud. Pixies came up with it basically, and Nirvana brought it to the mainstream, I guess. This album was not received well by their label, the David Geffen company, whatever it is. They thought that the way In Utero was recorded was unlistenable. It was too noisy, that there's no way a mainstream audience would want to listen to it, etc., etc. They brought in Andy Wallace to remix it, and I know Steve Albini was not happy about that. He said that remixing an album would never change the performances that were laid down during the recording process, and that it hardly ever improved the overall sound and feeling of a record. You know, I'm paraphrasing, that's not the exact quote, but I read that the other day because I was reading and watching a lot of interviews with Steve since I heard the news of his passing. I also downloaded a bunch of Big Black, Rape Man, Shellac. Those are his 3 main bands, and I've been listening to them a lot lately. I just wanted to acknowledge Steve's passing because I would be remiss not to. He was a huge influence on the way I think about music, the way I think about recording, and the way I think about musical integrity and dynamics in general. So, thank you, Steve, for everything that you gave the world. And I hope people learn from your techniques and that they carry it into the future as this ever increasingly digital AI world starts to evolve or whatever. So that's it for this video. I just wanted to thank you guys once again for checking out my last video, and I plan on making more and more content as things happen in my life and in the music world. If you want to help this channel, but you don't have anything to say really in the comments, you can just drop a crystal ball emoji, a pumpkin emoji, something like that. Those are my 2 favorite emojis, and that will help. That will help the video and my videos just do well, do better. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, talk hard.